What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and today I've got an absolutely broken melee spam build that will give you virtually unlimited weakening, unlimited unraveling rounds, and unlimited void kills, splash damage, and super regen. This is an extremely fun build, extremely versatile. You can build it how you want to build it. And quite honestly, it's not a build that really I see anybody talking about, but it is not one to sleep on. So if you've been looking for a build, you're tired of seeing the other meta videos about the same thing, this is completely off the beaten path as far as builds go, but this thing is an absolute powerhouse. And I suspect once more people discover that this build even exists, that it will become more popular and arguably even meta. I know even in my build testing before making this video, I was having an absolute blast using this build in Nether Arena as well as my normal build testing sites and just watching the synergy overflow. So if you do find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I will of course have a dim link as well as my Discord link if you'd like to connect further. And if you know a Guardian in need who's looking for a build that maybe nobody is talking about or is completely off meta, they just want something that's extremely unique but yet completely viable in any activity they might find themselves in, make sure you share this video with them. And as always, I appreciate all the feedback and positive vibes and support. You guys know I'm going to keep bringing it, and this one is no different. So let's get on into it. All right, so first up, we got a Prismatic Warlock subclass. Now, the super here is completely up to you. It is not specific to any one super. I personally recommend running the Nova Bomb Cataclysm, Song of Flame, or Storm Trance. The reason for these three is I think they're going to be the most powerful options. With the Storm Trance and Song of Flame being roaming supers, you're going to get that super energy back very quickly, as well as both of their abilities to stun champs intrinsically when you pop them. The Nova Bomb can be fired from virtually anywhere from distance, so that also makes it extremely viable. My personal preference, and you can play around with it how you want, is going to be Nova Bomb. So that's the one I would recommend for this build. Abilities don't matter as far as the Rift and the Glide. You can pick whichever one that you want. Arcane Needle is the very necessity of this build. You want to be able to have 3 stacks of Arcane Needle virtually at all times. We have a way to synergize that with getting our super back, as well as being able to generate orbs of power, and it's going to play into weakening. Grenade, I personally prefer the Storm Grenade, but you can pick whichever grenade you want. I just really like the fact that it is arc, and it's going to synergize well with the aspects that we have. For aspects, I've got Feed the Void. I want my health back, and I want my grenade back as fast as possible. Lightning Surge is going to be kind of a necessity in this because I think it's too valuable to take off for what we're trying to do. This, when you activate your Lightning Surge, it is considered a powered melee. So because this is going to be a melee spam type build and you're going to be able to weaken enemies with it, this is going to be pivotal because the others just don't really give you that. For Fragments, Facet of Purpose, you want your Orb of Power, and based on the super of your choice, I think this is going to play a role in what super you decide. When I have a Void super, I get an Overshield. You can get Restoration though, as well as Bolt Charge, depending on what element you use. The only one I would recommend probably against would be the Stasis super, as I just don't think it's up to power with the rest of them. And especially given the Nether Arena, as well as Nightfalls are going to be, GMs are going to be opening up here in a week or so, I think that one is going to be the weakest. So any of the other 4 honestly are probably going to be best. I want my Overshield, so that's why I've got that one picked. Facet of Awakening, rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows generates an elemental pickup of matching damage type. This goes into the whole, it doesn't matter what super you're running, just make sure that you've got weapons to match it. But How you're going to have this built is going to be entirely up to you. I have my preference, and I think the way that I've got it set up will probably be most beneficial and get you the most ability energy back as fast as possible. But you want the elemental pickups, because no matter what you get from those elemental pickups, it's going to help you get some ability back. Speaking of abilities, Facet of Balance is probably more necessary now than ever for this type of a build. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. Because this is a melee spam build, you're going to pretty much want to run a light weapon for main ad clear, possibly your heavy, as well as your super. So again, that's the reason why I picked those 3 supers to begin with. I just couldn't say it yet because we hadn't gone over the fragments. So Facet of Balance, absolutely a staple in this if you want to be spamming your melee. Facet of Sacrifice, when you have an arc, solar, or void buff, ability, final blows, grant bonus, darkness, transcendence energy. This isn't going to be a build where you're going to be spamming transcendence, but you could if you wanted to. That's how good this build's going to be. And because you're going to have an arc or a void buff pretty much at all times, you're going to get bonus darkness transcendence energy because you're going to be running through both your melee as well as your lightning surge, which again is a melee, but it's a different kind of melee. Last but not least is Facet of Protection. Because this is a melee spam build, and because of the lightning surge aspect that we have equipped, you are going to be surrounded by combatants fairly regularly and playing aggressive. So it's important you get a little bit of extra damage resistance when you're flying around the battlefield. For stats, pretty straightforward. I focused on resilience, discipline, and strength. A little bit of a moderate for intellect, but that's just because you can switch through your supers as you deem necessary. So right in the sweet spot at about a T5 or a T4 or a T6 is going to be very appropriate no matter what you end up using. As far as resilience, though, you know as well as I do, health is at a premium in the Nether arena. You want to have your damage resistance as high as possible. You also want to be able to have your grenade as often as possible and your melee stacked as many times as possible. Remember, it's up to 3 times. I'm going to go over weapons first, so that way you guys can get an idea of why I'm building this the way that I'm building it. First up in the kinetic slot, I highly recommend running a fusion rifle. It really depends on what activity you're running. First and foremost, I want to be able to handle all champs, which is why I have a fusion rifle. But if you are running another arena where you're not going to be seeing champs as often, you can run virtually anything in this slot that you want that you really think will help you with maybe backup DPS or possible ad clear. Or in the case of this auto rifle right here, Reciprocity and Attrition Orbs, this can also give you some health back. That Reciprocity perk can give you the health back that you've been looking for if you don't want to chance it using your exotic for Crimson. Or, if you do want to use an exotic for help with your DPS, you can always throw on Malfeasance. If you don't have Borrow Dyad, that's okay. I have it in here as more of a, hey, this is available, you can use it, but it's not really intrinsic to the build per se, unless you do decide you want to run Strand Super, and then your Harmonic Siphon can bounce or balance with this weapon as your main ad clear weapon. And I'm telling you, this thing hits like a truck. So whenever you guys get this thing unlocked, consider filtering it through your builds, so to speak. It does hit very well. And because it is new, Bungie is going to let us have some fun with it before they try to balance it out with other weapons like it. And last but not least, you can always put on Riptide. That chill clip, always super useful. For the energy slot, I highly recommend using Graviton Lance. The reason that you want to use Graviton Lance is the ability for the splash damage from the void projectiles that spawn from using Graviton. Any light kill will give you melee energy back. So it makes the most sense to use something with superb splash damage. If you do end up running solar, You can use your best solar splash damage weapon. I'm thinking Sunshot or whatever. But again, you also want to synergize with the artifact, which is why I'm choosing to use Void, because you're going to be able to proc Volatile as well as Weakening by using Void weapons. That's on top of what we're going to be going through here in the armor. So Void's probably going to be your best bet here. Any of these weapons right here, the Recluse, Age-Old Bond, Positive Outlook, which you can get from Zavala, or the Mahis, which is a random world drop. All three, or wow, I can count. All 5 of these options are going to be viable options because of their ability to generate splash damage. And then that moves us on to our heavy, which you want to be able to hit as many shots as possible. Now, because of the artifact, you will be able to proc unraveling rounds. So if you wanted to swap in, let's say, a Pro Memoria or a Watchful Eye just for the jolting feedback, you can do that. But I recommend sticking with Void first and foremost and being at a little bit of a distance so you can proc Volatile and get your extra DPS in. Again, these 3 Void weapons right here, Retrofit, Hammerhead, and Commemoration, they're not going to get Nobel Prizes for being DPS kings. But what you want is consistent DPS. And since you're going to be seeing things like Tormentors in the Nether Arena, machine guns are probably the best weapon to use against Tormentors, if you didn't know. Most people are aware of that already just because of their high DPS per shot and moderate hit, just the way that they handle overall. But if you didn't know that and you've been trying other things against Tormentors, try out machine guns. I'm telling you, if you have a Commemoration or a Hammerhead or a Retrofit that can pair with your artifact, that's just going to make you way more powerful. I'm going to go through the artifact next before I go through the armor, because the armor is going to tie in the whole build. All right. So first up on the list, I've got these 3 selected in the first column. Same as some other builds, but we're going to go through what I haven't talked about because I'm primarily running Void and Strand. All of my perks that I'm going to be selecting are going to mimic those 2 types of weapons. So first up is Volatile Marksman, probably the most popular and most powerful perk on this entire artifact. Unraveling Orbs, picking up an Orb of Power, you get your Unraveling rounds, therefore making your Fusion Rifle, if you have a Strand Fusion Rifle, not only stun unstoppable champions, but also pierce barriers. Hold the line while surrounded machine guns and glaives, gain increased reload speed and stability. Final blows heal you. Again, another reason to equip a machine gun, even if it's not a Void machine gun. Dielectric, defeating arc debuff targets grant bolt charge. The reason I had this selected is because of our Storm Grenade and because of Lightning Surge. Those are going to be considered arc debuff targets if you get a kill with either of those abilities. So you're going to get Bolt Charge. Of course, once you get Bolt Charge, when you activate an ability, you're going to be able to send basically a lightning strike to the location of said ability. So just another way to get some bonus damage without really having to do anything extra than what you're already doing. Next up is King's Vestige. Defeating powerful Taken loads your weapon with Taken energy. The next time you fire, launch 3 Taken Seeker rounds that disrupt and exhaust targets. This one is a calculated thing, and I am running the Nether Arena quite a bit, as well as my clan and, friends and all that. So I'm going to be seeing Taken very often. But if you are running, Vanguard strikes and you're not seeing, Taken very often, or you're running, other activities that don't have any Taken in them, this might be something you might want to take off. But I think it's worth just using one of your 12 available selections just to keep it on there, because periodically you probably will find yourself in another arena, and it might be worth just not worrying about having to switch it back and forth. Maligned Harvest and Horde Shuttle. These 2 are going to speak for themselves. Rapidly applying Volatile causes your next instance of Void weapon damage to create a weakening burst. So here we're going to get into like the main part of the build, which is weakening. You're going to be able to proc Volatile with any Void build, or with any Void weapon, excuse me. So having the ability to weaken in a burst situation is going to be extremely powerful for you in the long run, whether you're running a Lost Sector, something in the Nether Arena, Or if you are going to try to use this build in the GM, it's going to really help as well. You're going to be able to dump a lot of extra damage bullets into a weakened target. Horde Shuttle is pretty straightforward. Damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a threadling. So if you are using Strand in your kinetic slot, this will also help you eventually spawn a threadling that can do some bonus damage. Again, you're not maining Strand, but Horde Shuttle gives you the ability, because of the melee that we're using, you're going to see threadlings periodically. So why not have the option to at least have a chance to get extra damage on top of the damage you're already doing? It just makes sense to keep this on. Last but not least, Heavy Ordnance Regeneration and Void Flux are going to be the two perks I'm going to use whenever I finally get enough millions and millions and millions of points to finally level this thing up completely. Defeating weakened targets with a void weapon applies volatile to nearby targets. Powerful targets increase the radius of explosion. Dealing sustained damage to targets with a heavy machine gun or rocket launcher grant damage resistance and increase grenade and melee regeneration for a short duration. The heavy ordnance regeneration is very straightforward. I want to get my grenade back and I want to get my melee back as fast as possible. Again, I haven't quite gotten to it yet, so I understand you're waiting for the knot that's tying all this together, but I want my melee back as fast as possible. And then this one, defeating weakened targets with a void weapon applies volatile to nearby targets. You're already going to be proccing that with Volatile Marksman. And then you're going to be diving into Maligned Harvest. So these three right here, Volatile Marksman, Maligned Harvest, and Void Flux, if you're running Void Weapons, which again is what I recommend you do with this build, you are absolutely going to be going bonkers with the amount of weakening and volatile you're going to be spreading all over the battlefield, which is going to give you enhanced abilities to just burn through all of these enemies. So just something to think about. I would 100% choose Void over Arc for this specific build. All right, you guys have been waiting for it, and we're going to get into it right now. The exotic armor of choice is Fellwinter's Helm. Warlord's End. Powered melee final blows create a burst of energy that weakens nearby targets. Finishers and final blows against more powerful targets increase the radius of the burst and the length of the weakening effect. Fellwinter's Helm has kind of sort of had a niche style play for a long time. It's something people have either dabbled with or have completely wrote off. And the folks that have dabbled with it, some of them have used it in a setting that has really benefited them. I'm thinking things like GMs, heavy ad traffic activities, and yes, even in the Nether Arena, it's starting to make its rounds, but it's not popular yet. But one of the big things that makes this important to the build is its ability to give the burst of energy that weakens nearby targets. That's going to pair perfectly with the artifact perks that we have selected in the artifact. So you're thinking about how many ways you can weaken targets. Well, the only way that we didn't pick to weaken targets theoretically is putting an aspect on our subclass build where void grenades weaken targets, and then obviously equipping a void grenade. Reason I'm not even worried about that is because you're going to be generating so much weakening just from using void weapons and your melee and your lightning surge. I mean, you really need a fourth way? Of course, I'm being facetious, and you can absolutely swap out one of those aspects for the aspect that has weakening added to grenades if you want. But I don't really think you're going to need it. In fact, that's why I opted for the arc grenade so that I could get more bolt charge. So if you haven't tried Fellwinter's Helm, you could take it into your favorite strike, or wander around the EDZ or whatever favorite planet that you have, or even in Dares of Eternity. Try it out. The reason that this is going to work best on a prismatic class is the ability to generate melee energy by using light energy weapons. So you'll notice that that's why I suggested 3 different light classes as your main super, because if you don't want to run void, you're still going to be able to proc weakening just by using your melee. So when I go through these mods, if you're thinking about how you are going to build this build, and let's just say you don't agree with me and you don't want to run Void, I think it is the most powerful option for this. But if you want to run other things, just remember your melee is going to cause weakening regardless. So if you wanted to swap this out for arc, make sure that you have arc weapons that are going to match what I'm about to show you. As far as the armor mods go, I'm taking a +5 to discipline. I just wanted to get over that T9 because discipline, even at T10, is going to have a higher cooldown than my melee. Heavy ammo finder, I always recommend that. And because this is going to be a melee spam type build, I'm going to recommend putting on a hands-on, especially if you're running Nova Bomb. It is absolutely not necessary to put this on to get your super faster. You will generate it quick enough, especially with an add dense activity. However, if you're going to be using your melee anyways, I would think most people would want to get even more out of it than just an amazing weakening burst that they can use to further take down enemies of the Traveler faster. And last but not least, Harmonic Siphon. This makes the most sense because you're going to probably have a 3 energy mod in this category. And if you do use these, which again, I would highly recommend doing because you are going to be spamming your melee often to get weakening procced and the weakening burst, so to speak, you might as well get some super energy back on top of it. Now, if you're running a roaming super, that might not be high on your priority list. So if you're going to do that, then I would almost recommend either putting on a second Harmonic Siphon, or you can put on another ammo finder, or you can put on another siphon itself. For the gauntlets, this one's going to depend on what you think is most valuable. Number one on my list is the harmonic loader. I want to be able to reload my weapons as fast as possible. Second up on the list is going to be heavy-handed. Your powered melee final blows create orbs of power, and causing momentum transfer. Causing damage with a grenade reduces your melee cooldown. I know you might be looking at this and saying, hey Durf, normally you have a way to proc orbs of power with both your grenade and your melee. Why aren't you doing that in this build? Well, because this is a melee heavy build. And the reason that I'm not doing that is because if I'm throwing my grenade out, it's just for some quick tick damage. I'm really not even using that to clear a group of adds because the melee itself is going to be able to spread weakening in a big enough circle, so to speak, that it's going to hit all the adds I'm trying to take care of anyways. So the only time I'm really going to be using my grenade is probably on a major or a boss. And again, I'm not thinking that a grenade is going to take out either of those. I'm just using it to add to the list of reasons why a boss should just give up and move on and let me kill it, basically. And then of course, use whatever general armor mod you think is best for your build. If you do want to max out your melee, that's 100% understandable. You can do that too. Next up, we've got the chest armor. The general mod is completely up to you. I recommend a 3 energy or less mod, but if you do have to go up to 4, just know that these 3 over here are only going to amount to 6, assuming that you're modding into an elemental resistance as well as a reserve mod. Now, if you put something on like a font of endurance or emergency reinforcement or charged up, yeah, you're going to have to figure out, how you want to do what you do. But these 3 should always add up to 6. This one leaves you open to equip a 3 energy or a 4 energy general armor mod as well. Next up for the leg armor, because I'm going to be using the build in the Nether Arena often, I absolutely recommend recuperation as your number 1 thing that you bring in here. Second up on the list, the general armor mod, spec into whichever one that you need the most. Third up, the reason that I've got my grenade cooldown when I pick up the Orb of Power is I'm not really going to need additional help getting my melee back because I'm using light energy weapons anyways. But you can swap this one out for invigoration if you really want to, but I don't really think it's necessary. And then Absolution, it's just a nice way to get all your abilities back just a little bit quicker. You're not really going to be hurting to get your melee back, but if you do find yourself outside of the Nether Arena, you could substitute Recuperation for Invigoration and get your melee back even faster than what you're already going to have, which again, you're going to be, you'll see, you're not going to be hurting for melee because you're going to be spamming light energy and your melee back to back to back to back to back. Oh, and then your super. Last but certainly not least is the class item. Now for the class item, highly recommend putting Font of Restoration on, simply because it is too good to just leave off your build, because chances are you're running other things than the Nether Arena, where having your Rift back as much as possible is going to help you. So if you have low recovery like I do, my first orb of power that I'm going to pick up is going to put me at a T6 power. That's a far cry from my T3 power right now. So if you pick up additional orbs, it procs higher. The general armor mod is completely up to you. This Warlock bond I got from Eris during that week where we were able to buy some Artifice armor before Heresy release. You know, so if you don't have an Artifice forged slot, wait until a dungeon that you can run on master difficulty and not completely pull your hair out drops, and then go farm your favorite encounter. For the rotator, I almost forgot to mention that. All right, so I've got Bomber as well as Reaper. The reason I have Bomber is because since I'm going to be a little bit in the face of enemies when I'm running my Lightning Surge, I'm going to be equally far away when I'm throwing my melee, because if I'm too close and I hit my melee, I'm just going to do a face palm to the enemy. So I'm going to have enough distance to where I can throw a melee out and I can throw a grenade out at the same time. So if you're thinking about it, throwing your grenade out immediately after proccing Weakening, and also standing in a Healing Rift on top of that, I mean, you're getting the best of all three worlds essentially with your build, just from doing one thing. And then the Reaper, I want my Orb of Power after I cast my class ability, even though I'm not doing it that often in the Nether for obvious reasons. Alrighty, so that is the build. There's going to be some debate on what super you want to run. I have a lot of people that want to run Song of Flame over Nova Bomb because they can proc Radiant. That is perfectly viable even in the Nether Arena as well. It's probably not as viable in, say, a GM setting or where the search isn't solar. But just remember, if you pick anything else other than Void in this, you got to make sure you mod your armor with your siphons as well as your reserves. Now, it is completely possible to switch this to, let's just say you want to run Song of Flame. Okay, that's fine. You put Song of Flame on, and you, instead of using any Void weapon, you're going to want to use a solar weapon. What you do then is you would come over here, make sure your Harmonic Siphon is equipped, so that way it pairs with your super, and then come down here, and instead of having, see, I've already got it set because I was build testing this before I did anything. I don't have Harmonic Reserves equipped because I have switched between Void, Solar, and Arc to try to figure out which one I like the most. So just to show that you can have everything that you need, I kept this on here so I could show you guys if you wanted to run a Solar or an Arc heavy weapon, or I'm sorry, not a Solar, a Strand or an Arc heavy weapon to take advantage of the artifact, you got to come in here and make sure you switch. And I just wanted to show you guys this so that you could see you're not going to be hurting for extra energy left over for your armor mod, so it shouldn't impact. And honestly, there's going to be some people that look at this and say, well, Durf, I don't care about this reserves mod. I'm just going to put on a third elemental damage and then I don't have to worry about it. That's fine too. If you don't find yourself in need of extra ammo for your heavy and you're only using it on bosses, for example, then this probably won't even apply to you. I like to sprinkle in my heavy from time to time, even in general activity when I don't really even need it. I like to be as utilitarian as possible with all my weapons at my disposal. But whatever you guys feel is best is completely up to you. You know, play to your strengths. Don't necessarily try to completely copy how I'm doing it. But I'm telling you, the way that I've got it set up with the Void and the Void Heavy, with the Void Ad Clear, Again, this, you really only need a fusion rifle if you want to make sure you can stun unstoppable champions. If you're going into the Nether Arena, I highly recommend equipping. I don't even care what the role is. Put this auto rifle on and heal your allies. If you get one that's got reciprocity in it, I have spent my time shooting at my allies because reciprocity, if you're not aware, when healing projectiles from this weapon strike allies, you also receive a small amount of healing. Again, this isn't going to make or break your run in the Nether Arena, but it is 100% viable for what you're trying to do if you're not going to come across an unstoppable champion. But I'm thinking there are people out there that are probably going to be running expert lost sectors and master lost sectors. This is where you would have this build like this. Fusion rifle, main ad clear, and then avoid machine gun so you can pierce barriers and stun overloads. Again, if that's how you want to do it. But either way, whether you do arc or void, just make sure that over here you've got the necessary modifications. I would still recommend, if you prefer arc, to keep your commemoration on. I would recommend keeping your void machine gun on, or at second best, your pro memoriam. The only exception I would make to this would be your Thunderlord. But again, the reason that you have the void machine gun in the first place is to be able to not only stun overloads with machine guns, but be able to proc volatile and pierce barriers. Because you notice I don't have a barrier piercing sidearm on here or a sniper rifle. So just keep that in mind when you're tailoring this build. But I'm telling you, once you see how this functions with the void setup that I have right here, I think this is going to be the one that you're going to want to run with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, let's see, how can I showcase this as easily as possible before actually going full speed? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll us into the breakneck mission, and I'm going to just quickly show you how big this weakening pulse is from a melee kill. So that way you can see it, and then I'm going to switch to Altars of Sorrow and just use it as though I'm running in the Nether activity or an onslaught or wherever you might find yourself. So here we go. So what I'm going to do right now, I did rally to the flag right there. I'm going to use up my abilities so you could see the super regen just for melee, as well as the weakening pulse in real time. That way you guys can get an idea of how spamming your melee or even just using it intermittently is going to make this build so much more powerful than you might think it might be. So here we go. I'm going to throw out my grenade because I don't care. Use my class ability, and I'm throwing out my super. So now you see all I have is my melee. So here we go. Boom. All those enemies are now weakened. And oh, by the way, in case you're looking in the lower right or left hand side of the screen, I'm not hurting for melee energy because I have the arcane needle. So here we go. Look at that. All those enemies are weakened right now. Now again, I know that this is a controlled setting, okay? But what you have to think about is the times you're going to be shooting a melee into an enemy from far away, you're probably going to... See, there you go. You're probably going to be expecting it to detonate on a minor enemy and spread that weakening to any enemy that's within a very large radius. And again, this is kind of what I'm saying. You're going to want to use your melee when you're going into a group of adds. Throw the melee down, even if there's majors in that group. I'm telling you, it's going to be worth it. So I'm going to get my melee back real quick. And you can see in the lower left hand side of the screen, I'm not hurting for super energy either. There you go. All those enemies are now weakened. And some of those enemies were not that close. You can see that even the unraveling rounds, because I'm killing enemies that are hit by my arcane needle, are traveling to other enemies. You can see that guy, well, it just despawned, but that Minotaur did have the unraveling debuff on it. So I'm going to switch over to altars, but now you get an idea of how this build is going to function just by the melee by itself. Alrighty, so I have just gotten into the activity now, and one thing I want to point out is you're not going to be starting off with your melee until you get a couple of them built up. So now I got them. You can see I'm almost 3 high, and I'm going to use my my other heavier weapons to wear down this nightmare and or major. And again, that's the key here. So here we go. Boom. All those enemies are now weakened. You can see using the arcane needle also unravels targets. So now, not only am I weakening this target with my consistent void machine gun hits, I am also unraveling targets. I am also weakening extra targets, and any unraveled targets that I kill also spread the condition to the majors and or bosses. So you can see I've already got my super procced. I have not been playing very aggressive. I also have full transcendence energy, and it's just that simple. So realistically, your gameplay loop, if you can even call it that, is you want to get some kills with your light energy weapon first, and then you want to work in your first melee. Your first melee is going to spread weakening, assuming that you shoot it at a minor enemy. Once you kill that minor enemy, you're going to get the weakening pulse that's going to spread to any enemy within a very moderate distance away. They don't have to be super clumped together, and that's important. See, like that right there. The weakening spread to basically all of those exploder units, and because it is a weakening explosion, so to speak, it did kill them. Now, you're not going to be facing the thralls all the time, but it's just something nice to have. So I'm going to throw down my super, because again, light damage kills grants me melee energy. I've got 2 melees jumped up right now. And, oh, by the way, I forgot to... Here we go. Well, I completely airmailed it, but it's alright. You get the idea. Using your lightning surge on, let's just say, a group of enemies that have a major in them as well, you can run up to the major, use your lightning surge, and any minor enemy or major enemy that's not killed will have the weakening debuff added to them on top of it. And you can see unraveling orbs or unraveling projectiles are literally everywhere. So it doesn't really matter how you use it, but I would recommend not using your melee to jump into a battle with a major. It's not going to do anything except give the... well, I mistimed that. It's not going to do anything except give your... now see, I just killed myself. But you see the weakening is on the nightmare right there. So thank you, teammate, for coming over to revive me. But I decided that I was good at the time. And basically what I was trying to show you, and you know I did, if you did catch it, the weakening happened even while using the lightning surge. So you can play exactly how you want to play, and also not have to worry if you're going to be getting all the benefits of weakening in your build with this warlock. So anyways, that is the video. I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't gotten to this step on what that is, but you're going to have some fun with that. if you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian who is looking for a really great prismatic build that can be synergized around melees, as well as, you know, big time damage with Strand and Void, and be able to stun all champions, please consider sharing this video with them, or at least send them my way. You guys know I'm always trying to bring out the best. And there you go. It was quick, but hopefully you guys were able to see that the weakening spread from the lightning surge. So and then obviously you get a stack of bolt charge on top of that, so you're giving yourself the ability to basically be as the most complete player that you possibly can, and that's going to be huge when you get into endgame type activities. So anyways, I appreciate your guys' support. This was a little bit long-winded of a video. I apologize, I've been a little bit under the weather, so I'm trying to just be as thorough as possible while also not coughing up a lung. But I really like this build. I think I'm going to start using it in GMs, and once the GMs get unlocked in Heresy, it's going to be something I think some of you are going to want to try. Certainly try it in the Nether Arena and see how it works for you guys. Of course, let me know in the comments. And I don't know if you just caught it there, but I did just see a lightning burst from that melee attack that I just did on top of the weakening burst. So just another way you can keep damaging enemies over and over and over again with different tick damage options. So I really appreciate all the support, guys. Please consider liking and subscribing if you resonated with this video. If you have any feedback, feel free to get at me on my Discord as well as in the comments. You guys know I'm super interactive and I welcome it all. But until next time, guys, take care, be safe out there. I'm going to bring it to you guys next week. I got some more builds on the way, so stay tuned.